The Tulsa Race Massacre of 1921 destroyed the prosperous black community of Greenwood, known as Black Wall Street, leaving hundreds dead and thousands homeless. Black Wall Street was the Greenwood district in Tulsa, Oklahoma, a thriving African American community in the early 20th century. Residents had built a self-sufficient economy with business, schools, churches, and professional services, creating one of the wealthiest black communities in the United States at the time. The area symbolized black prosperity and cultural pride during an era of segregation and systemic racism. The incident, the massacre, began on May 31st, 1921, after a 19-year-old Dick Rowland, a black shoeshiner, was accused of assaulting Sarah Page, a white elevator operator. Although the charges were never proven, rumors of a potential lynching spread rapidly. Black residents went to the courthouse to protect Rowland, leading to a confrontation with a growing white mob. SPconvo, SPconvo. Let's do it. What's going on, people? Here we go. Black Americans, Africans, Black Caribbeans, oppression, aggression, progress. I think all black people that come from all over the world want the best. And I think there's similarities with all ethnic groups that share the same race baseline, culturally differences, but the race baseline, no person of color, especially with a dark hue, could deny that. The cone heads, the three Ks. In America, this hood means something. It means oppression. It means danger. It means collectively, somebody about to die or be brutally harmed in the United States of America, especially way back then. But black Americans wear this now. They wear hoodies, sweaters, and rap videos. When the weather is cold, use it to cover your head to keep your head warm. It's part of American culture, both black and white. White people wear the hoodies like collegiate, playing sports, football, jogging, keep them warm. Black people put it in a more fashionable sense. But what took place to make black people assimilate so much into white culture, or white culture assimilate into black culture? To me, it's just common sense. They both live on the same landmass. So, when you rock with each other, you become one with each other, even though you have differences. Now, that's for the blacks in America that have to deal with the whites in America. But what about the other blacks? The blacks from the Caribbean? What about the blacks from the Caribbean? When they mix with different cultures that's in their landmass, whether it be British, Asian, Middle Eastern, Spaniard, they all become one and settle into one and become one nationality. Does that make them totally different than the American blacks who only mix with the blacks and the whites. There was French whites in America, British whites in America, Spaniards in America. Look at the different 50 states in America, and it will show you who were the conquerors, who was the colonizers of those states. What about Africa? Certain states or countries in Africa have mixed blood. South Africans have European blood mixed in with them. Certain parts of West Africa have mixed blood mixed in with them. Even though predominantly Africans are more, even though predominantly Africans have a even though predominantly Africans are pure black, their skin is more dark than any other black ethnic group outside of Africa. So the similarities in that alone shows the disparity that no matter where you go, black people always going to be the underdog. That's what I see. Even though in America the blacks are considered privileged because the structures of the United States of America are vastly great. Power stays on 24/7, constant water running, toiletries efficiently profound, press a button, your feces go down, press a button, your urine go down, running water to brush your teeth, wash your face, take baths. But other than that, that's only due to the country landmass. The way the system is ran, everybody benefits. But the rent in America is high. Food costs is high. Survival is high. And America knows this. So they have programs out there to make the citizens be able to work through their struggle. So America is a system more so than a country. I'm here to speak on the similarities that black people have. Each struggle is a different struggle for black people throughout the world. But it's black people that's always at the bottom for the most part. I'm going to say in America, the black people is at the bottom because you have an oppressor, which is a white oppressor. In Africa, you have everybody predominantly is black. So I don't know why they're oppressed by their own people. I don't know. Maybe there's a mindset. In the Caribbean, they're more freely to have what they want because it's the island more so than a continent or a country. But there's oppression there too. Most people in the Caribbean own their own things, but they still have to pay to the government, which is predominantly, say, influenced by outside powers, such as the U.S., France, Britain, Canada, Germany, Russia, China. So there's oppression there too. I want to play a video. Shout out to the original content creators. This is about what happened in America, 1920. At the same time, 1920 Haiti, America is making its influence to Haiti to dictate what was going on there after the French decided to leave. America started making their way sometime like 1920 to Haiti to influence certain things. While they was doing that in Haiti, they were destroying black people in America. Let me take off the cone head.
Century, severe segregation laws dictated where Black Americans could live and work. But in Tulsa, Oklahoma, one community built an extraordinary, self-sustaining economic ecosystem within those tight restrictions. People across the country called it Black Wall Street. Money earned inside the Greenwood district stayed in the district. It circulated rapidly through Black-owned banks, hotels, restaurants, and law offices, compounding local wealth rather than bleeding it outward. The district featured vast commercial architecture, like the multi-story Williams Dreamland Theater, establishing sophisticated infrastructure and permanent cultural institutions. Greenwood was a fully realized American neighborhood. Its residents built immense prosperity in a country that actively denied them opportunity, and that very success made the district a target. On May 30th, 1921, an incident in a downtown elevator between a young black man and a white woman triggered inflammatory newspaper coverage. Rumors moved faster than verified facts, immediately inflaming existing racial hostilities. What began as a tense standoff at the courthouse rapidly escalated. Over the next 48 hours, armed white attackers poured into Greenwood. They looted homes, they burned businesses, they drove families from their neighborhoods. The attack took on a terrifying, organized structure. Authorities deputized and armed white citizens. Witnesses reported airplanes circling overhead as large community pillars, like this massive brick church, were systematically engulfed in fire. When the flames finally died, 35 city blocks lay completely leveled. Thousands of people were suddenly homeless, walking through the smoking ruins of their own city. The precise death toll remains unresolved to this day.
And you see, it was all because the original narrative of America, as I always say, that black and white cookie, that black and white cookie caused this to occur. A shoe shiner, 19-year-old young man, was accused of doing something to a elevator technician, a white woman, and all chaos broke loose. All videos that I play is fair use, fair use. All videos that I play is fair use for educational purposes. Shout out to the original content creators of this. Fair use, fair use, fair use.
The physical city and dozens of lives were violently destroyed in a matter of hours. But the burning of Greenwood was only the first phase of a much longer tragedy. The immediate aftermath brought a severe bureaucratic crackdown. Thousands of displaced residents were detained in internment centers. To move through their own ruined city, they were forced to carry identification cards authorized by the very system that failed to protect them. A massive humanitarian crisis followed. Entire families required emergency medical care, food, and temporary shelter, relying on major relief operations just to survive the week.
You see? Within America, they had the same thing. Just like in foreign countries, the same thing. Relying on government assistance relief to be fed, to depend on, because people have to survive. That's the similarities that black people have all over the world. So black Americans are not as privileged as people may think. They went through some stuff. They could relate. But if the information I put out there, then everybody gonna think they going through somebody's always gonna assume that, oh, okay, they don't know what it is to go through that. They have no idea. They never went through that. Learn the history of every country you decide to migrate to. Or forget just moving to the country. Just open your mind and learn world history. And then you get to understand how similarities are so important, especially when black people throughout the world share the same oppression. The only difference is the level or magnitude of it.
Overnight, a thriving entrepreneurial class was pushed into destitution. The attack stripped them of their property and their autonomy, shifting their focus entirely from compounding wealth to sheer survival. As the smoke cleared, the second phase of destruction began: economic erasure. Property owners filed claims to rebuild, only to discover riot exclusion clauses hidden in their policies. The claims were systematically denied, leaving residents with absolutely nothing. This animated timeline shows how the 1921 destruction ripples forward, instantly eliminating collateral, inheritance, and business capital. Extending data into the 1950s reveals a stark divergence. Projected wealth climbs high, while reality shows a disrupted earning potential affecting unborn grandchildren.
See
Rebuilding a
that?
structure over
Let
time
me stop
is
right
not
there.
the
Let me stop
same
it
as
right there. The situation is so dire that the grandchildren of the future won't have nothing. They never allowed generational wealth. They never allowed it. They already was ahead of the game. The oppressor was already ahead of the game. That's still being done all over. Yes, you may get a little bit, but it would never be as much as what you had.
recovering stolen wealth. The massacre
Run it
enacted a
back. Look what she
permanent
said.
vengeance. Projected wealth climbs high, while reality shows a disrupted earning potential affecting unborn grandchildren. Rebuilding a structure over time is not the same as recovering stolen wealth. The massacre enacted a permanent, generational economic downgrade on an entire community. Then came the third phase, historical erasure. For decades, the massacre was intentionally omitted from national conversation. Textbooks ignored it, classrooms bypassed it. America practically forgot it happened. The legal system offered no remedy. A 1921 grand jury investigated the events, but it completely failed to deliver any accountability proportionate to the slaughter and the destruction.
See? No responsibility was taken for the massacre in Tulsa, 1921. 105 years ago. Literally 105 years ago. So just imagine immigrants coming to the country 60 years ago, 40 years after that happened. That's going to be a problem with people saying, oh, you saying we lazy, we don't have nothing. Did you just not read or understand? We just went through X, Y, and Z 20 years ago, 40 years ago. Do you not understand that? Or you just see that America is such a big country, you could take, and screw y'all. That's not our problem. But it is your problem because you share the same skin tone as people born in America. And the understanding that you need to understand is no matter what you speak, what you eat, once you come to the US of A, they could care less. You share the same baseline as the American black because we know, they know, saying the government, forefathers know where they took you from and where you landed. And now you, wherever you was landed at, you decided to migrate from there to come to America to where everything started bad for the black slaves. So because you went to a different country and you have a different culture, don't mean when you come to America, you're going to be put to the side as being seen as different because you're not. Once you start getting hasty and talking back, you're going to be rectified. So if you're a coward, you can come to the country and you have everything you want, but don't say you tough when it comes to speaking to black people or people that look like you. Because when the oppressor come, you cower down. Don't be like that. Be who you are. That's what I'm gonna say. That's the difference between Black Americans and other groups outside. Is when a pressure come, they're not gonna cower. They're gonna fight and die for their right to survive. Where other groups gonna play the game of, oh, nah, it wasn't me. I don't know about that. I don't come from there. That's too much. I will never do that.
Silence became the final weapon used against Greenwood. Because the nation looked away, the heavy burden of preserving the truth fell entirely on the survivors and their families. But history does not vanish just because it is ignored. Public recognition slowly grew over decades, eventually leading to a 2001 State Commission report and a 2025 Civil Rights Cold Case review by the Department of Justice. Today, investigators are actively conducting forensic archaeology in places like Oaklawn Cemetery. Using ground-penetrating radar and careful excavation, they are searching the soil for the unmarked graves of the victims. The specific goal of this methodical work is to use genealogy and DNA analysis to return names to the nameless. They have
So now they want to do something after they already benefited from 105 years of free labor and expertise and richness. So still to this day, Black Americans can't push because that's in their head, and it's a fact. You're gonna only be allowed to have what they want you to have. Anything outside of that is gonna be taken away from you. So recently, the courts have ruled for Donald Trump administration to end TPS for certain migrants. And there's still Black Americans fighting for that. But it's the older generation that's still fighting for that's still fighting for Black immigrants, or was considered Black Americans, distant cousins, to stay in the country. There was a good reason for Black Americans, as I just learned, during the civil rights movements to fight for the Caribbean, the African cousins to come to America, to align with Black Americans, make babies with Black Americans, be one, become a stronger, dominant race to stand up against the oppression of the whites. That never happened. They came to America and they separated, making the divide and conquer even more easier for the oppressors or for the people that was in control. But I get it, because nobody want to get in trouble for somebody else, or nobody want to be treated bad if they didn't do that to themselves to get treated bad. So the new generation of Americans are a little bit more smarter than their parents. They get it. They're saying, hey, we're not our parents. We're not 80, 90 years of age. We're 30, we're 40, we're 27 years of age. Y'all don't like us. So go. Go. Because you're not smart enough to come here and blend in with the people that are educated here, with the people that have more money than you, with the people that have the resources. So now it becomes, we was looking at y'all with open arms and receiving y'all. Now it becomes an attitude where y'all don't benefit us. You're only here to benefit yourself. So since this is our country and we have what we have, and you try to take it from us, and government try to give you that push to take it from us, and the government look at y'all now as non-good resources, non-good people to have around, due to they got the receipts. Most people end up getting in trouble in America, not added on to America, taken away. So for that, the Supreme Court granted Donald Trump administration the right to end TPS, because TPS stands for temporary protection status. So let's go with this. Right here it says Trump administration ends TPS for Haitians, and this where we at. Trump administration ends TPS for Haitians.
TPS allows people currently in the U.S. to stay and work legally if their homelands are deemed unsafe.
Here we go. Run it back.
TPS expected to impact 500,000 Haitians living in the U.S., setting them up for potential deportation. The Department of Homeland Security stating this decision restores integrity in our immigration system and ensures that temporary protective status is actually temporary. It goes on to say, quote, the environmental situation in Haiti has improved enough that it's safe for Haitian citizens to return home. TPS allows people currently in the U.S. to stay and work legally if their homelands are deemed unsafe. Immigrants from 17 countries, including Haiti, Afghanistan, Sudan, and Lebanon, were receiving those protections before President Donald Trump took office for his second term in January. According to a recent report from the International Organization for Migration, gang violence has displaced 1.3 million people across Haiti as the local government and international community struggle to contain a spiraling crisis. The Trump administration revoking TPS expected to impact 500.
You understand? So that's done. That's done. So now they got to go back home. Let me get an understanding of how people think. And I'm going to say this. A lot of human beings are two-faced. Always want to try to play both ends against the middle. If you say you're a good person and you're not a bad person, so why you don't point out the bad people and let yourself continue to live good? Here's what I mean. Most Haitians, or most of anybody, any group of people that want to come out of a situation, they're going to basically say, I got to do what's good for me and me only. Okay, so let's say this. People come to America, they do good, they never committed crime back home in their country, they come to America, they continue to live good. Now they have people that come from the same country coming into America with them. They know they're the bad people. They move in with the same community as them and they don't say nothing. They know they're criminals. They go to the country, but they don't say nothing. Right? Okay. You ask them why you didn't say nothing. They would say, oh, because back home, he could get me harmed. If I have a vacation back home, he could get me harmed because he's nothing in America, but back home, he's something. All right. So now they arrest this guy. They come to you and they say, do you know anything about his bad behavior? No, I don't know nothing. Cool. So now later on, you have a guy like Donald Trump, Donald Teasy, comes back into the fold and say, I'm getting rid of all the people from your community. And you too, that didn't tell us back then who was this person and why he did X, Y, and Z. Because you said if you ever go back home, things going to happen to you. So wouldn't you think that if you would have told them people, they would have sent him back home or send them back home and you would stay in America for the rest of your life and live your life and not have to worry about these people ever doing something to you, per se? Okay. So I see most people don't think like that. Okay. Because I get it. They're afraid. But that's the same reason why you left your country, because you was afraid. So now you're here in the States where it's protection, where people can go to jail, where there's no bribery like that. That person cannot bribe an officer to keep him out of jail. America don't play that. You do wrong, you go behind that wall. Do the crime, do that time. Your name rings nothing in America because nobody's above the law in America. Or there was times where America say, listen, who you loyal to? This country here or the country you come from? Now you try to play the game and say the country that you come from, there's nothing there for you, but you love America. So now America is a country that come at you 2, 3, 4 years later after you accomplish things to see what's your answer going to be. Who you for? America or your former country? I still have family back home. That's where I'm born. That's where I'm raised. So, but just prior, you said you for America. So now you go back home. They go in your house to see your country flag on the wall. No American flag. They see your country flag. But your country didn't afford you this life. America afforded you this life. Now you have to go back home. Why are you afraid? Why are you angry? Home is home. Home is home. Everybody love to go home, right? I always find that interesting. Just tell the truth. Home is no good for you. You didn't want to be home. You don't like home. You raised there. You can't disrespect where you're from, but It didn't do nothing for you, and America is the country for you. For whatever that reason is, America is making sure you have a good life. Now, I do get this. I do know from back in the past, America had influence over countries like Haiti, Dominican Republic, Cuba, Puerto Rico. You know, they took the resources of coffee and sugar, um, vegetation, you know, mangoes, plantains. I understand that. But in retrospect, the trade-off was the country government allowed people to come to America to live a life. And the trade-off was most of your food and resources were sent to America so you could live in America, eating your country food, so you could get up in the morning, go to work, and keep the money in America. So that's the trade-off. Because best believe if your country didn't give up something, you wouldn't be able to come here. This is after we talking now. After the civil rights of the 60s and the 90s and the 2000s, countries from all over the world made deals with America. And that's just how it is. So now that your country to 2026, people getting deported, certain people countries don't want them to come back to their country. They don't want them there. So now Trump has to send people that's of a different origin to a different country because their own country don't want them there. So while you're in America being proud to be from a country that you left, your country now saying we don't want you to come back because you're not us. And it's a tricky game playing both sides against the middle. It's a tricky game. For me, wherever I'm at, that's where I'm at. I don't try to impose my will. I don't try to change the fabric of that place that I am. If that food is not something I'm used to eating, I gotta eat it. I have to eat it. I don't want to have no dog in that fight. I just want to do what I gotta do to survive. If people come to America with that mindset, they'd be all right. Instead of looking down on people in the country, having your opinion about people in the country, getting caught up in the nonsense, you're all right. You'd be all right. Because one thing I know about the United States of America, they don't say nothing, but they listen to all. So are you bashing these people country, no matter for what it is, you think they ain't gonna be emotionally behind that? Yeah, they're gonna be emotional behind that. Donald Teasy is happen to be the president that's gonna let that be known. If you don't like my country, go. You don't like nothing about my country, go. You're not wanted here, you're not needed here, you don't make a difference here. And we got the receipts to prove it. Shout out to this content creator. Fair use. The original content creators. Shout out. But he's going to speak on something when it comes to the Africans and the Americans. Now, this is different segments of different people's podcasts. So, fair use. For educational purposes only. I'm trying to put a message of why is the division there with different black people throughout the diaspora, where we have a baseline of understanding we all oppressed in different ways. We all come from struggles in different ways, but it's still not us being on top. It's us climbing to the top and still realizing when we get to that top, there's a whole nother other top that we have to accomplish, or we have to push to get there. Strive to get there. Need some water.
Of slavery and African or Black American are USA call African Americans Akata. Why do
Oh,
Black
sorry.
Africans
Here you go.
often clash?
Here we go.
be an offensive word. Like I've heard it used. Yeah, you know, I've heard it used in offensive ways.
Today, I want to discuss African Americans and Black Africans. Also, why do Nigerians living in the USA call African Americans Akata? Why do Black Africans often clash with Black Americans, Akata? Terms like FBA, Foundation of Black American, ADOS, American Descendants of Slavery, and African or Black American are often used interchangeably, but they represent specific identities. In contrast, the term African lacks, in my opinion, the same identity connotation. It includes a wide range of ethnicities and cultures. For instance, a Zulu has very little in common with a Wolof. Yeah, a Zulu is a person from South Africa, it's one of the major ethnic groups, and a Wolof is another one from Senegal, one of the major ethnic groups. They have as much in common as an Italian and a Serbian, someone from Serbia, a Serb. I specifically mentioned Zulu instead of simply referring to South Africa, and Wolof instead of simply referring to Senegal, because the European powers created this modern nation state during the colonial period. This division was primarily for their own administrative purposes and to prevent other Europeans from establishing claims in Africa.
Wow, you see? It's my first time hearing this. So, out there in Africa, as this man is breaking it down, the European control that. So the Europeans claim different names and have people subjugated to different groups and different ideologies. That's why Africa can't get it together. You see? All right, let's just fast forward.
Illustrate why I believe that African is not a singular identity. It doesn't convey much on its own. For instance,
here we go.
Largest Black African community in the USA. Note my term. African slaves were transported to places like Jamaica, Cuba, Barbados, the Bahamas, and the USA. This historical context helps explain why many African Americans share features with Nigerians and other West Africans. However, within the USA, many Africans, particularly Nigerians, Ghanaians, and some other West Africans, often do not get along with African Americans. The reason for this disconnect is that we are no longer the same people. African Americans have developed a distinct identity, and in many instances, the only commonality left is our skin color. Nigeria has the largest Black African community in the USA. Note my term, Black African. I did not say African. Countries like Egypt, Tunisia, Morocco, Algeria, and Libya are also in Africa, but are not part of Black Africa. This distinction illustrates why I believe that African is not a singular identity. It doesn't convey much on its own. For instance, just as Japanese and Cambodians do not identify as Asians despite being from the same continent, Mexicans, Americans, and Canadians also typically do not identify as North Americans. Most Nigerians in the USA belong to the Yoruba and Igbo ethnic groups.
All right. So you get a breakdown of that. Let's start from here.
Share similar physical features with Nigerians and other West Africans. Their cultures are distinct. African Americans are generally categorized by openness, humility, and a welcoming attitude compared to Nigerians. They don't condescend to others and have developed a unique culture influenced to some extent by the group that has dominated them for centuries. For instance, African Americans believe that love is the foundation of marriage. They see nothing wrong with having children outside of wedlock and are often willing to end a marriage over issues like infidelity, disrespect, or simply the fading of love. This cultural perspective emphasizes individualism and the pursuit of happiness shaped by the dominant culture of the country they now call home. Unlike traditional West African cultures, African Americans do not have a language developed over millennia that serves as a code for their traditions. This is where conflict arises between the two groups. Despite their similar appearances,
Now, this is what I was saying. The similarities, nobody break that down. They quick to go towards the differences. He's a prime example. He's breaking down differences. They keep breaking down differences, but nobody want to talk about the similarities. How all the similarities is how all these individual countries that he just spoke on, they're all poor. They all live in squabble. They all had their resources taken away from them. They all try to push probably at one time to have, and then here was another dominant society that took it away from them to keep them ground level. Nobody speaks about those things. So I speak about that throughout the whole globe. Anybody that have a certain skin tone, practically connected to more of an African root or your original identification would be from Africa. Anybody that share that connection is going to be oppressed. He's talking about where Americans get divorced because the woman got cheated on, or they have babies with another race, because it's about happiness, about living your life. It's not about listening to what your forefathers said, because that's just so stagnant and dominated. Right. That's it. That is American culture. Don't stay oppressed. Don't stay miserable. Live your life, because you only live one life. And you're not supposed to live a life of misery and boredom and period. But he's not talking about the similarities, because nobody want to talk about the similarities. But he do have a point. Black Americans' culture had changed because they live in America and they disconnected from the other groups of having that, I'm going to say, only because we're in today's modern times, primitive mindset. Black Americans don't have a primitive mindset. Staying with one man forever while he abuse you and do you wrong and cower down on you while he go out there and do what he want to do and act like he's the most magnificent, significant person, or marvelous person on earth because he providing food and shelter. Where in America, a woman could go get her own job and provide food and shelter for herself. But let's continue.
they are not the same. A typical Nigerian may lack the humility between the two groups, despite of the country they now call home. Unlike traditional West African cultures, African Americans do not have a language developed over millennia that serves as a code for their traditions. This is where conflict arises between the two groups. Despite their similar appearances, they are not the same. A typical Nigerian may lack the humility and open-mindedness often found in African Americans. Often, Nigerians judge African Americans solely based on their skin color, overlooking the fact that an African American is as distinct from a white person as they are from a Nigerian. When a Nigerian approaches an African American the way they would approach a fellow Ghanaian or Senegalese, disappointment can follow. Conversely, when an African American approaches a Nigerian with respect and tolerance, they may feel that the Nigerian is looking down on them. Ghanaians have a more subtle mannerism than Nigerians, though there is still a culture.
All right, he's talking about the differences again. Let's fast forward.
West African or broadly African person may see an African American as a brother and expect them to act in alignment with that perception, only to be disappointed when that expectation is not met. Conversely, The African American witnesses a black person who is ever so ready to submit to the authority of white people, even at the cost of their dignity. This may be particularly disheartening for the African American who has faced centuries of degradation from white and resist any further oppression. They perceive a shared identity in the black African, yet feel troubled when they see actions that undermine pride because the white man sees every black person through the lens of all black people, including black Americans. So
Yep.
this bothers them. One manifestation of this complex relationship is evident in how Nigerians in the United States refer to African Americans as akata, a Yoruba term meaning
A
wild
wildcat.
cat, or in a layman's term, lost child or a lost person. This perception and terminology.
Okay, so they said a kata is a lost child or lost person because they don't have the connection of African roots, right? But that's a culture thing. And for the most part, to have all that culture and still don't get no respect from the white person means what? What's the sense of having all that culture and you still cower down to a person that's white? So all you have is your eating practices, your language, and you proud to have that, but you poor and you cannot move up in society. And then people are people. That's what I said. People, human beings, they're two-faced it because he want to look down on black Americans as not having no culture, but yeah, he's coming to the same country that tells you we don't want you here. And we're not gonna give you no respect. We don't care what culture you have. That's a good for you thing. When you go back home, that's good for you to be able to speak to your own people in your own language. Now, this is what I want you to do for me. Make sure your people see me in the light that when I walk through your community, they keep their head down so they could show dominance. As he just now said, an African American look at an African a certain kind of way for bowing, cowering down to a white person based off what the black Americans or the African Americans had to do in America to keep that respect and that pride up. So a black American or African American or FBA or ADOS ain't gonna give an African that much respect for that reason. That little small thing. A black American say, forget the culture, I want my respect. So forget the fact that I can eat this food and eat that food. That don't mean nothing. That don't mean nothing. And evidently, you come into America, you're gonna have to assimilate to the black American ways one way or another if you want respect, because they're not gonna respect you for your culture. And that's what people don't get. America is a system. Culture don't mean nothing. It's a system. Because what people not getting is that white America, they detached themselves from the European culture long ago. So when a white American person see you still have your culture intact, they only want to get information to see if you're talking about them. And if they could prove that you're talking about them, you will be targeted next. So like I said, the similarities in the black race is we all going to be oppressed, attacked, we're going to be observed, we're going to be studied just for the simple fact of when they're going to try to make their move to overthrow us. That's all white people have in their head to a certain extent is are y'all going to get together collectively to overthrow us? But in reality, they don't have to worry about other black people from around the globe because they know they're afraid. So they give them their culture because that's what make you feel like you whole is your culture. Hold on to that. But other than that, you're afraid. Because if you're not afraid, we'd have made your move. Like that song. Make that move. Right now. Baby. But you're not going to do that. The similarities supposed to be we all come together from all of us being oppressed throughout the globe. Forget what kind of food you eat and food you don't eat. Forget what kind of language you talk and language you don't talk. Collectively push forward so we can have. But that will never be. Let's continue before I sign off. Fast forward.
Present a
What if you could make a song using only your voice?
Here we go again with these commercials. Bear with me.
different reality. The Africans who moved to Britain retained their languages and cultures, presenting a similar experience between the traditional Black British Caribbean community and the newer Black African British community, a similar scenario to that in the US. Pan-Africanism is a concept that emerged in the Western Hemisphere among former slaves who were their languages and cultures presented.
Here we go.
So when they arrived, they'd already adopted a distinct identities as Black Caribbean by the time they arrived. Meanwhile, the more recent peoples as a homogeneous group, often associating them with negative stereotypes such as criminality, gangster life, ghetto, poor command of the English language, and aggression. However, when you group only Black Africans without African Americans, the crime statistics become clear that Black Africans from countries like Kenya, Ethiopia, and Senegal commit fewer crimes than white Americans. Africans in the US should not be categorized solely as Black because this broad classification often perpetuates the stereotype of criminal behavior. Kenyans, Ethiopians, Angolans, Senegalese, Ghanaians, and Nigerians represent distinct cultural groups and should not be recognized as one group or grouped together. It's worth noting that the historical context in the UK is different. The Black British descendants of slaves were brought in from the Caribbean. So when they arrived, they'd already adopted a distinct identities as Black Caribbean by the time they arrived. Meanwhile, the more recent migration from the former African British colonies presents a different reality. The Africans who moved to Britain retained their languages and cultures, presenting a similar experience between the traditional Black British Caribbean community and the newer Black African British community, a similar scenario to that in the US. Pan-Africanism is a concept that emerged in the Western Hemisphere among former slaves who were unified by their shared experience of discrimination based on their skin color. They faced a world dominated by white.
So, right there, the similarity, skin color. So, that's what I'm saying. The skin color is one baseline similarity and also where you came from originally. So, it seems like everybody's trying to get away from that, not being judged by skin color and try to put culture in front to say, oh, accept me because my culture is different than these people's way of looking at life. So why put me in the same box? As I said earlier, if you're such a good person, when you have people that's come from your community that does crime, point them out. And start worrying about when you go back home, there's a chance you may be harmed because in America, he's nothing, but back home, he's somebody. Hey, you took that risk. Take that risk all the way to the end. So let's get into back what he had to say. I think he's going to say about the culture separation. And I think he should, if he's smart, and I'm giving him credit for being smart, I think he have an understanding that the culture is not going to mean nothing when it comes to the skin tone. Let's see. Let's see if he get it.
They'd lost their language, traditions, culture, folklore, names, and ethnic identities. In the face of centuries of hopelessness, they dream of returning to a free and independent Africa became a source of hope. In 1900, Henry Sylvester Williams, who was born in Trinidad and educated in the United States and Canada before moving to Britain, organized the first Pan-African conference in London. Afterwards, he went to Southern Africa to to practice law and became the first black man to be called to the bar in the Cape Colony. Shortly thereafter, W.E.B. Du Bois and Marcus Garvey helped to popularize the movement in the early 20th century. These individuals drew their identity from their skin color. They did not fully recognize that black Africans did not define their identity in the same way. African identities were deeply rooted in their names, language, traditions, customs, and ethnic backgrounds. White South Africans are South Africans. White Australians are Australians. White New Zealanders are New Zealanders. White Brazilians are Brazilians. And white Argentinians are Argentinians. Similarly, black Americans are Americans, not Africans. We must respect their distinct identity and not expect them to behave like us, as they have been separated from Africa for centuries. The only reason they are being singled out is that their country happens to be the greatest in the world. There are more black people in Brazil, yet there.
You see? Now he's giving credit. He's saying their country is the greatest in the world. Their country, the same country they built through slave for 400 years, happens to be the greatest country in the world. So now the narrative or the agenda or the aim is to realize that they messed up. And they said, we come to America, we stay on our own, we do our own, we're going to survive, we're going to push, we're going to have, because we come with a self-identity. When they come to America, they realize all that goes out the water. All that goes out the window. Got washed off in the water. You should have came to America and migrated and intermixed with the black Americans. Each one teach one. Y'all could have pushed forward and have more. Still one about the culture part, man. The culture got erased a long time ago. Everybody that came to America, whether by force, which was the slaves, or willingly, by the conquistadors and the conquerors and the colonizers, they never went back home. They made America their new land. They fought the British invasion. They had their war. And that's what happened. They decided to never go back home and stay here. Now this is the greatest country on earth. So when you come to America, you need to understand that the black Americans are up there with the white Americans. Even though they are oppressed, they still have more than the average black person. Period. Hands down. That cannot be discredited. That cannot be changed. That cannot be fortitude to be something else other than what it is. Michael Jackson, Michael Jordan, Mike Tyson, Floyd Mayweather, Chris Brown, all these black Americans are considered great by the money they have, the talent they have. Even the educated black people in America, the lawyers, the Jesse Jacksons, the senators, all these people have. And they had, because after they went through what they went through in America, they were able to have the education. But not everybody in America is fortunate to have that. So you still have a large group of people that come from poverty, that don't know no better, that their basic education is high school, then they get a chance to progress into college because there's still barriers there that other people they want to look at and respect and realize that still, to a certain extent, if you come from abroad, America open up that door and give it to you before they give it to a naturally born U.S. citizen, because the rules still remain. These are my people. I brand them. They wasn't considered nothing until after we let them become something. So whenever we want to hold them back, we can. Your job is to come to America, get what you need to get, and go back home and build your land. But people's not doing that. People's not doing that. For whatever their reason is, they're not doing it. So, that's my show for today. Hope it was an informative one. This brother right here. Shout out to him. Band 2 Cities Diaries. Original contact creator. Black American, Caribbean, and Africans, the similarities and differences. Let's see. America is moving forward. But the narrative's still gonna be black and white. When you come to America, if you're white, you fall into the white category. If you come into America, if you have color and you're black, you fall into the black category. Culture don't mean much. Once people understand that, you understand that. SPconvo. SPconvo.